Brent Leary.
Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM players back at our usual time and place.
We're in our place. We've been put there. We've been put in our place.
Well, it's good to be back at 3 o'clock.
Yeah, it kind of is actually. The world was out of sorts when we're not here. We are the steadiest thing in the world right now.
Really? That's
Yeah.
not saying much about the world, but
No, it doesn't.
Anyway, we are the CRM players, and we've been bringing that since then. Whatever that is, we still don't know what that is.
We need to go to the Bellagio and ask the AV guy, see if we can find him. We know his name, Austin.
There's like 5 Austins
I
there.
know. One of them's going to have something.
Something. Maybe it's the as.
Well, I know where it comes from, but I don't know what it is.
I bet you don't know what this is either.
Ooh, yeah, Vietnamese.
Really?
Yeah, well, it could be Cambodian too, but I'm going to go with Vietnamese for now.
Okay. Let's see. That was the moment of Sven.
Well, hey, Sven, welcome back, man.
And we know Abraham Lincoln said it. So.
Yeah, in Vietnamese. I didn't know he spoke the language.
Maybe it's the Gettysburg Address in Vietnamese, because that was only, I think, 263 words, if I'm remembering correctly.
So let's see. I wonder if this is like 7 years ago in Vietnamese.
Either that or how was the play, Mrs. No, I better not say.
No, don't go there.
Anyway, so we will wait on the answer from the one and only Sven from the moment of Sven.
I'll tell you, that was a paramount moment at the IRL 26 when he came on. That was pretty awesome.
Paramount or Warner Brothers?
I'm going Paramount.
Well, let's see. What is he saying there?
I am off, Paul. What is it?
Because you got it right, apparently.
So fast.
The best thing about the future is that it is always served to us one day at a time. Did he really say that?
I don't know. That doesn't sound like a Lincoln thing.
I didn't know he watched that show.
One day at a time. That probably did. Well, there's a lot about Lincoln we don't know.
Apparently.
He had a TV set. He watched one day at a time. Right.
Remember that people would make up quotes that he said about stuff that couldn't possibly have happened by the time he
or about the internet. That was it was the big one. It was about the internet.
Yeah, Al Gore wasn't a fan of that one though.
No. But Sven, that was for me easy one.
Why was it so easy?
I know a lot of Vietnamese people, and I've seen the language in print many, many, many times. Look, I work in patterns, man. I know the patterns of the accents and all of that. That's how I know the language is really. I know the patterns of the words and the patterns of the use of the various, accents of the words. That's how I know it. I don't know the language, but I know of the language by its patterns.
Didn't Forrest Gump say something like that? Life is just a box of patterns or something like that.
I thought it was a box of chocolates.
I mean, chocolates in patterned boxes. I don't know.
I like chocolates.
So did he. Anyway.
Forrest Gump of CRM. My next nickname.
Yikes.
Yeah.
And you might want to hold off on that one.
I'll take it. What the hell?
So this is one of those Thursdays, one of those no BS Thursdays, and I think you guys know what that means, and you should know who that means.
Can't wait.
But that's in the offing, as Abe, good old honest Abe would say, the future is unveiled 1 minute at a time, and we'll do. So he will be in the very upcoming future.
Diacritics. Thank you, Chris. I could not remember the word, so I was being I was going as close to it as I could come up with. Thank you.
What the hell is diacritics?
That's like the little marks that you'll see above and below letter. Double dot, or the little accent aigu or accent grave, those kind of things.
Oh,
That's why I went with accent, only because it was the easier word. I thank you, Chris.
you know what? I
love
only
you now.
I only know Christopher. We're taking liberties. He's saying Christopher. So
All right.
I only met him because he had left some really cogent comments. Ooh, cogent comments. I like that. Cogent comments on last week's Brohammer and the Cowboy Show. I know that's not what they call it, but they really should think about renaming that thing. Because Brohammer and the Cowboy is such a good name.
Well, no, you know what? Let them keep their name. It's good when we do it. We'll keep the name. Right. That's.
I want to go. I want to go to an event and see somebody else walk up to John Reed and say, "Hey, what's up, Brohammer?"
Somebody we can. That's going to happen.
I want it to happen.
That will happen.
Almost as much as I want to happen. Somebody walk up to Brian Summer and say, "What's up, cowboy?"
That one's almost easy. That's the thing.
I just want to see his face when somebody does it. That's my main thing.
So, Christopher, what's your story, man?
Wait a minute. Why is Sven not happy with bullshit?
No, Bob Stutz.
He likes no bullshit. I think we all like that. John. Every day is school day.
Yeah, diacritics versus accents. Learning something new. Well, it's actually learning something again. I should know this. I mean, it was an English and journalism major. It's not like I shouldn't know that.
And you went to what was that school that you went to?
Northwestern Medill School of Journalism, which is now called something like the Northwestern School of Interactive Media or something like that.
Oh, go back to the original name, please.
I know it was just still journalism. I know. Well, you know, times are the times.
Yeah, it's so hoity-toity the way that sounds.
Well, you know, to Northwestern's credit, they do a really good job with that school.
Well, they ought to, because they got a lot of money.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, I don't contribute very much to them. First of all, I was probably one of their biggest rebels at the time. They didn't do me any favors either, but other than not throwing me out of school. And second, they have an endowment of 1.4 billion. And when Trump came down on them, there was a bunch of us from the class of 70, 71, 72 that started circulating this big thing to the university saying, don't give in. It's kind of all the ex-radicals and the ex-liberals. Well, there's not ex-liberals, they're all liberals. We're all kind of liberals now, but including Eva Jefferson, who was president of the student class, a prominent lawyer on the West Coast. She was great. And we circulated this big thing, and we basically said, look, we'll back you up if you do something about it. But they didn't totally capitulate, but they kind of did. So nobody's gonna. Yeah, it was not good.
It wasn't that Neil Young song, "Won't Back Down."
I asked Christopher what he did. I think he answered.
Yeah, wow, what an answer! All right, I'll read the full thing. I'm re-engineering ERP in BS.
BIS.
Couldn't help it. ERP/BIS. Well, ERP definitely needs to be re-engineered.
So do you mean you're actually leading a team of people who are re-engineering ERP by building something new? You're re-engineering SAP. You're re-engineering. What do you? I don't know. I'm curious as to what that means, really. And and as far as the domains go, happy to help. Look, you gave me back diacritics, so I am absolutely in if you need some help on CRM.
I'm guessing. I was thinking diacritics. Wasn't that L. Ron Hubbard stuff?
No, God, no. That was Scientology, first of all. But
Dianetics or something.
Dianetics was his.
Yeah.
His, what do they call that?
He wrote a book on that.
Well, it was a philosophy of sorts, but then they had the machines they hooked you up to. There's a whole thing, man.
L. Ron Hubbard's diacritics. I like that.
That ruins the English language.
Yeah, Christopher. So thank you for joining us. And yeah, you got a big job ahead of you if you're re-engineering ERP, but it's a good job to have because they kind of really need it.
Link up with me on LinkedIn. Well, let's have a chat.
Link up on LinkedIn.
Yep.
Link
I'm
up on
I'm
LinkedIn.
I'm
There we go.
trademarking that.
Yeah,
Then I'll sell it to Microsoft.
you're in the right spot there, Christopher. Because when we bring on our not a guest, he's a regular.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into some stuff, but before he comes up, we actually have some things that we can get into because
Yep.
Earlier this week, Adobe did their summit, and we did our opening keynote watch party, and I watched it again, and I made the clips, and at first I was like, were we a little too harsh? Were we looking for things that maybe we shouldn't have been looking for in that particular keynote? And then as I thought about it again and I looked at it again, I realized I think we were more spot on than we maybe even thought we were at the time. Because we were just saying things that I think a lot of people are thinking, and not just people in the financial markets or anything. I think actual customers are looking for certain answers to what's going on at Adobe because of some of the things that have been happening to them over the last couple of years. And so I think we are spot on. And I'm going to tell you why I think maybe the next biggest opening keynote that is going to have far-reaching ramifications beyond even the company. It's going to be ServiceNow knowledge. But I want you to talk about, do you think we were more on than off with our kind of take on the opening keynote for Summit?
No, I think all four of us were spot on, actually. I mean, we knew, how would I put this? We know Adobe started kind of middle of the pack on AI at best. It was actually a generation, at least before the keynote, was a generation behind publicly, meaning they were still in Gen AI, where agentic was going everywhere. We knew also that if they didn't start appealing to the enterprise, that they had a real problem, like a really serious problem. We also knew that this was, Shantanu's goodbye. And the way that it was a combination of things. They buried the lead, which was not AI and agentic AI. That's table stakes at this point for a company like Adobe. But it was actually Adobe Enterprise, which was 54 minutes into the first into the keynote, they brought it up. Right, they do have it, and that's a good thing. And it goes to Liz Miller's point, which was they did actually announce some good product work stuff.
And Michael
Klein.
Yeah, Michael Klein said that, I haven't looked at them yet, but I do plan on it. He said the second day keynotes were product focused, were actually a lot better. And
again, technically, these companies, they all have good products. I mean, every one of them, even though I'm never, as you know, I'm not a terrible fan of SAP anymore, but that's more the company, not the product.
He still likes Sven, though.
Yeah, I love Sven. That's not like I like Sven. I love Sven. Right. So, the thing is that Adobe buried the lead. I mean, it was nice to see Jensen there, but you could see they were floundering actually ultimately with him there. And they were just basically kowtowing to him, and it didn't really do much. Ultimately, that was a pretty fruitless conversation. They left everything that they needed to say unsaid, other than Adobe Enterprise. And then they just announced a bunch of things that were basically table stakes for the company, which is fine. I mean, again, table stakes means you have to have them, and they have them, and that's a good thing. But they blew their opportunity. Look, there's been a big six with them for years. They've fallen out of that at this point. And you've mentioned it multiple times. Their stock price is tanking, right? I mean, it's terrible. And but there's a reason for this, not just investor lack of confidence. It goes to your point, which is customers are wondering how they take them into the new generation. And the other thing that happened, which I thought was terrible, even though I agree with Michael 100% when he said, and I've always said this too, which is there needs to be one Adobe, and Max and this keynote really should be continuations of each other, but this wasn't that. This was Max early, right? It was this ridiculous. We were talking to individual creators the whole time, and maybe the audience was some of them, but I'm guessing that's not who shows up at the digital experience conference, right? So for me, it was a big hashtag fail kind of thing. Although I want to say it was a horrible failure? No. Do I think it was a bad failure? And to Keith's point, missed opportunity. Yeah, big time. And I'm not happy with it. I'm very unhappy with it. I think they're lucky I'm a retired analyst now.
I'll say this. I think the modern vendor opening keynote at their user conference had to change post Chat GPT coming on board. And it feels like it's not just Adobe. It feels like a lot of these user conference opening keynotes have not changed the way they should have changed, the way they should change. It feels like there was a lack of understanding what was going on in terms of the talking outside of their walls. Like, it's not just the financial folks that are questioning these enterprise SaaS companies about who they are now and where they should be. It's their customers who are also questioning things around, what's going on with AI and how is that changing not only the products that they have, but the relationships and the pricing models and the business models that they should be participating in. Yep. There was no mention of any of that.
Nope.
And how can you have this moment when we talk about, you got other keynotes, you got the product keynotes, and I think those are extremely important as well. But you have to address what's going on outside. You got to address the talk, the chatter. This whole AI anxiety thing, it's not something that's made up. It's maybe we think it's inside the bubble. It's kind of ridiculous to talk about companies, these enterprise software companies going away. But even though we might think it's kind of dumb, you still got to address it. I mean, if you're these companies, you got to address it. Yesterday, ServiceNow came out, and I'm looking. We have our person in the room, so we're not going to make him wait much longer. Remember the last time we got kind of blasted by him. So just going to say this, then we'll bring him on because I'm sure he has some thoughts around this too. Yesterday, ServiceNow came out with their earnings. ServiceNow is one of the leaders in the enterprise SaaS. There's no other way to say it. They're the leaders. They beat expectations for both top line and bottom line. I think they raised their earnings estimates a tad. You would think that would be like great news and their stock price would be like going crazy. But let me show you something that I just took a snapshot of right before we got started. And it's the stock prices of a number of enterprise software companies after ServiceNow announced, and this is today. I did this like less than 2 hours ago. ServiceNow is down 18%. Wow. Figma 11%. Atlassian 10%. Well, you can see Salesforce 9.65%. All the way down there to Adobe, who's I feel like I said only down 7.75%. These companies, when they and partially what the thought is, ServiceNow, their latest acquisition of Armis, which I believe is around $7.8 billion or something like that. And it's all around helping them build their AI architecture and armor. People are kind of tired of the investment in the AI, and they want to see the return on that investment, and that seems to be partially, if not, a big reason why they're down. So their Knowledge 26 event is about 2 weeks away.
Yep.
Are they going to address this whole AI anxiety thing as part of the keynote? Or are they going to do kind of like what Adobe did, which is kind of felt like they ignored it completely?
Yeah.
I don't think you can afford to ignore these things. The narrative has to change. And I think when you have your big user event of the year and you have the opening keynote for that event, you have other keynotes that are product related, that's great. But during the opening keynote, where we know most of the eyeballs will be, you got to address this kind of stuff.
Of course, always. I mean, it's silly to ignore something that's so loud in your head that it's drowning out everything else, right? And with me, it turned out to be tinnitus or tinnitus, but with other people, it's, when it comes to a enterprise company, especially a leading enterprise company, they have a lot more to talk about, and they have a lot more to address in order to look. Years ago, if you remember, SAP decided to go to the cloud and said that on-premise was dead, and therefore, and this was just said with no narrative around it, no context, nothing. It was Lars from SuccessFactors actually announced it, and he announced it to 30,000 on-premise SAP customers. And SAP told me it took them over 2 years to recover from that one speech. Because the customer said, "Oh my God, you're going to stop supporting us, right? Because you're declaring on-premise dead to 30,000 of us who were on-premise with you, right?" So that's what I mean. These are not just words; they impact the way businesses operate, the way people operate, the jobs that people have. Bad wording can put 3,000 people out of a job, right? So you can't mess with that.
And there's good reason why they invested in this company, and here's like a little brief synopsis of it. I mean, there's some really good stuff in here and why they invested, but the overall atmosphere for these huge acquisitions, particularly when it's focused around AI, it's scaring a lot of people, and you have to address this kind of stuff. And I wanted just to get that out of the way because I think there's a lot of BS out there around some of this stuff, and I know we need to go BS free. And that's why we don't want to keep this next person waiting. It's No BS Thursday, and that means Bob Stutz is in the house. Hey, Bob.
Hey.
The man.
Hey, that was a nice lead-in.
It was pretty cool.
I was afraid, actually.
After last month, both of us were getting ready to leave the show as soon as you got on. It was like to log off.
Just get out of his way.
Get out of the way.
All right, so Bob, I don't know if you caught any of the Adobe stuff. I don't know.
I did. I caught the Adobe. I caught the ServiceNow. Let's talk about ServiceNow first, because I think, to your point, right? I mean, look, they were on this rocket ship, right? The hockey stick was taking off, right? And I think the real problem with ServiceNow is I think they made a bad acquisition. Number one, I think it confused people. I think people aren't clear. What is the vision and the strategy for ServiceNow? What are they really trying to be at the end of the day? I don't think anybody knows anymore. It was really clear up until they started making acquisitions, right? They acquired a CPQ company. Why the fuck did they acquire a CPQ company, right? Then you start looking at their other acquisitions and you get, okay, somewhere, were AI related, made sense, right? But overall, if you look at their strategy, I'm sorry, but I don't think Bill McDermott has a strategy. I don't think they know what they're doing, where they play, how they fit into this new world. right? I mean, to me, I always looked at ServiceNow as a tools company, and a good one, right? They were tools that you needed, right? Workflow tools, right? They had the best, right? And I think they were on this path of really, with AI, becoming true to that. But then all of a sudden, it gets confusing when you make acquisitions that really aren't like in your core wheelhouse, right? And then and you see their stock price, right? I really believe the financial analysts don't have a clue what they're trying to do at the end of the day. And where do they fit in, right? Now you look at what Salesforce has done, right? So Bill McDermott announced they were going into CRM. They were the next big thing. He's made that mistake twice in his freaking career. Once at SAP, now he's done it at ServiceNow, right? They're not in CRM. They were never in CRM. They had little bits and pieces. Because you acquire a CPQ company, it doesn't mean you're in CRM at the end of the day, right? And then they talked about being in customer service, but they're not really in customer service. So the reality for ServiceNow is get a fucking vision, get a strategy that people can understand and believe in. I think even their customers don't know what they're trying to do at the end of the day. And now you have a crowded space. Now you have Salesforce that came out with all this stuff. Don't even get me started on that one. Oh, you don't have to log into your CRM anymore, but you still have to fucking log into to something, because the stuff's just not out there floating around, right?
Exactly.
Enterprises have rules, right? So what are you logging into? Well, you have all these bots that are floating around. Well, you got to log into something, otherwise
it's not you.
This is another one of those things that Salesforce does that, it's on the surface, oh yeah, it's a nice little marketing play. Oh, you don't have to log into your CRM anymore, but you still do. I do think that, I think with Adobe, they've lost their way. I don't think they know what to do. I think, given everything that's happening with AI, the tools that are available now on the AI market around marketing, right? That some you don't even pay a whole lot of money for at the end of the day, right? I mean, I think Adobe has not been able to really say where they fit into this new stack, right? I mean, you saw the Canva stuff, right? I'm a Canva user. I love that stuff, right? You look at some of the stuff that's out there nowadays and you go, do I really need Adobe at the end of the day? If I'm a marketing person, can I do without Adobe, right? And the reality is, in some ways, you truly can do without Adobe, right? You don't need all their tools anymore. Look, I pay that ungodly subscription fee every year for the freaking Adobe, right? Which pisses me off to no end when I got the last bill, right? I mean, look, I still use a lot of their stuff and I like it,
Yeah,
right?
me too. Yeah.
But there's other stuff out there now that's even better than what Adobe has, and it's easier to use, right? I think the problem with companies like Adobe is they suffer from a lack of talent. In the whole software business was about being able to imagine things and then really come up with new stuff that you could put into production, right? That you could build products around. And to be honest, Adobe I think they've lost their way. I think they just don't have they had this magic for so many years, right? Coming up with new stuff, right? And I think when they stick to the creative side of things, they were really good. But then, they started buying things like B2B marketing.
Right.
And what did they really do with it at the end of the day, right? It never really became a big business for them, right? And I think that's the problem with a company like Adobe too, is I think they just don't have a vision. I think a lot of these companies right now are struggling with a vision. They can't come up with a vision that says, where do I play in this new realm of AI? And how am I going to keep my customers in this new realm? Because I mean, you can see what's happening, right? Like, I work with a lot of new AI startups, and what's amazing is they don't use any of Adobe's tools. They don't use any of that stuff, right?
Wow.
These guys are all using pure AI marketing stuff, right? They're using stuff from Google. They're using stuff from other AI vendors, right? They're not using Adobe, right? They don't need it anymore, right? They're able to do things without them, right?
Hey,
And I
do you
think
think these companies were caught off guard with the speed of which this AI stuff has taken off?
I think they were, not only were they caught off guard, I think they were caught with their pants down, actually, to be quite honest. They couldn't, they didn't see it coming, right? Yeah. And I have to say, right, like, 10 years ago, I was talking about what was going to happen with AI, right? And how AI was going to really accelerate, right? Because you could see it coming, right? It was happening, right? And I think companies just didn't listen. I think they didn't believe that it was going to happen as fast as it did, right? And now, you look at the speed now, right? And I mean, look, you cannot build this shit yourself. You have to go and acquire companies. And that's where I don't see Adobe making a move in this space.
They acquire individual contributor level companies.
And that's it. And see, instead of looking at like, how do I play in this space now? I need to go acquire stuff, right? I need to, because you can't build this stuff fast enough anymore. You need to find these startups who have these great things and go acquire them. And years ago, Adobe was really good at that. Adobe was they were one of the best, right?
Yeah.
Start with remember, right?
Well,
exactly, right? You can go back to all their acquisitions to the start of when Adobe got into the creative space, right? When they acquired
Macromedia,
right? Or Macromedia, right?
That was great. Yeah.
They saw the future, right? And they were first to act in doing great acquisitions, right? But over the years, I mean, they just have not made good acquisitions.
Well, the other side of it with Adobe, it's just occurring to me while we're talking, is look, they have to set, obviously you have to set some table stakes. You have to have the table stakes stuff now. And they more or less, they announced it. Doesn't mean they actually have it. But the irony of Adobe to me is, there's a company that, to Michael's point of One Adobe, you have to basically show how an individual contributor and essentially an enterprise marketing team are effectively, a group of persons who are tied together, in a manner of speaking. And the irony,
I disagree with you. I think it's gone beyond the enterprise.
Oh, I do too. That's where I'm going. Right. Let me finish.
The thing is, now Adobe has not played to the content creators. That has been the real problem. They have not played to the content creators.
That's all they did with the Creative Cloud.
But it didn't do anything. No, but I mean, really, if you think about it, how do people create content, right? You look at all these people that are making tons of money.
Nobody's using Adobe. Nobody can afford Adobe. When Adobe acquired Figma, I remember we were working on an original website, and one of the first things I heard from all the people working on our website was panic over the fact that Figma was going to be destroyed, right? That was literally what they were, and luckily it didn't go through according to them. They were very happy, and they are the individual content creators. But here's the thing. So Adobe, if they just looked at their own blocking and tackling, they announced Adobe Enterprise, they had the content supply chain, which is a legitimate thing. It's not just a marketing term. It's actual thing. And it literally solves the problem I know Brent and I and you have talked about, which is distribution, right? It actually solves this blocking and tackling, hardcore, scalable stuff that they have. And they don't even talk about it other than abstract references here and there. And it's literally sitting in front of their faces to do something with, and they don't, and because they had to go agentic AI, which is fine, but up to a point, it's fine. Not the point they went to.
I think the agentic AI thing, first of all, it's overhyped, right? Yep. Everybody knows that. It's look, I use it every day. my life would be lost without it.
Right.
However, it is overhyped, right? And in the enterprise, if you think about it, right? I mean, there's all this talk, lack of leadership. That's why AI is not getting implemented, blah, blah, blah. It has nothing to do with that. It's the fact that the stuff doesn't really work. And there are a lot of use cases where AI becomes valuable, right? But I also will tell you that every time somebody comes to me and says, oh, look at support or customer service, I can say, well, yeah, 5 years ago, you could do that without AI. I mean, to be quite honest, right? Yeah. A bot's a bot at the end of the day. And to be honest, I don't think these bots are much smarter than the bots were 5 years ago, to be right. I don't think the true value of AI has not really been understood. And I think enterprises are having a hard time really trying to figure that out, right? What is the true value, right? Is it knowledge? Yes, knowledge is a big piece of it, right? You now have more knowledge at your fingertips than you ever had before, right? Does it make you work better? Yes. Does it keep you better organized? Sometimes. Depends,
You have to.
Sometimes I have a lazy bot that fucks up on me, and then I miss appointments because it didn't actually do what it was supposed to do, right? So I do think, but back to your original point about all these companies and the hype around, what's happening in the SaaS world versus, are all these companies going to disintegrate? Look, nobody's going to disintegrate overnight, but their value is truly dropping, right? I mean, you look at ServiceNow, you look at their market cap. What is it now? 100 billion? I mean, it keeps dropping. No, I think it's actually like below 100. I think it's like 90 now or something, right? You look at a lot of these companies and their market cap just keeps coming down, right? I think even SAP now is at 165 billion or something like that. I think Salesforce is around the same, and when you start looking at the market caps of these companies, right, you start realizing their value is dropping, right? And it's not just their value. I think it's also how customers are starting to perceive them, right? Look, I look at Salesforce, right? And like, I like Salesforce. I have nothing against Salesforce. Like they have a big breadth of product, but at the same time, what they're doing is really just, when you say you don't have to log into your CRM system anymore, does that mean I don't have to pay for the apps anymore? Does that mean I get the apps for free?
Well, to your point, that is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, really. I mean, the reality is how they're going to know anything about me.
You still have to sign into Slack, right? You still have to log into Slack, right? So
you have to log in someplace.
And all they've done is made Slack the one point of entry into their product. That's what they've done, right? But the reality is when you look at all this stuff, right? And now, what am I going to pay for? I'm going to pay for those apps that I have to keep paying for. But on top of that, I'm going to have to start paying consumption in the form of tokens.
Yeah, boy, that is pricey.
Right. Now you start to add that stuff up.
Well, isn't that part of the AI anxiety of that?
That is part of the AI anxiety. Yeah. That is absolutely. And that's why I actually believe, look, companies aren't stupid. The companies have a lot of smart people in them, right? When you look at just take the Fortune 500, right? They have a lot of smart people in those companies, right? They're going to start, and look, they have a small army of developers, right? And, I heard this argument the other day about, well, but if you build it yourself, then you got to maintain it. True. And years ago, that was a huge problem. Now, in the world of AI, that is not a problem anymore. That maintenance of that code becomes much easier, much faster than it ever was before, right? And so I actually do believe that enterprises are going to really start building their own stuff. And, the SAPs, the Salesforces of the world are going to be relegated to systems of record. That's what it's going to become, right? They're going to become databases.
Can they turn themselves into systems of context, like a lot of companies are talking about, or a system of outcomes?
Oh, there's
That's
like
another one of those things they
different
talk
new
about.
systems.
Yeah,
The
there's
problem is to become a system of outcome in the AI age means you have to totally rethink every process, right? That means you have to blow up what you have and start over again, because you have to think about it differently, right? In the age of AI, the problem is, and this comes back to, I take it back to the Accentures, the Deloittes, the freaking service companies, right? They got companies to like go into these big process things, right? And they have these big process maps and all this stuff. But the reality is you can make process very simple at the end of the day. And in order for these companies to survive, they have to rethink all that. They have to think like a startup, like they were looking at this from brand new perspective, right? Not what they have in their code for the last 30 freaking years, because that doesn't help anymore.
How hard is it for them to think offensively versus defensively? Because it feels like that's what a lot of these big companies that have been around for a long time, that have built these, significant companies, and they feel like, though, I'm just kind of talking from my perspective, I'm not talking for them. It feels like the earth has moved from under their feet, and they're trying as much as best as possible to defend what they have, while these new startups are able to go completely on offense. And it feels like it's going to be very difficult for them to make that transition. How do you see it?
Well, it is. And part of the problem is when you're supporting 40 years of legacy, how do you even have the resourcing to play in that world, right? Let alone hire the people, because the people who need to come in and do that, they don't want to work for a company like an SAP. They don't want to work for a company like a Salesforce, right? They're done with those types of companies, right? They want to work for companies that are small, that are truly agile, that can build fast, right? And it's amazing what a company with 14 engineers can do nowadays in the AI world. Right? So, and you just don't have that in other places.
Let me ask you this. Well, two things. There is the other side of that, though, and this is very practical. They might want to work for those smaller companies, but the smallest company is going to be able to pay them enough to work for them, right? Which is another big question.
No, but the AI companies, look, they're paying
those
their
are
people.
Big companies now.
And by the way, they're paying their people better than the big companies pay their people at the end of the day.
All right. So now, let me give you part two, though. Brent, can you bring up Christopher's stuff? He had like 3 comments in a row. No, way earlier, when he was talking about what he's doing. He starts by re-engineering SAP. Keep going. Up. It's at 310.
I don't know.
They'll go up one more and then go to that one and then go to the third one.
Good Lord.
That one. Okay. So read this, Bob. Read this quote. Then read the next quote and Brent, bring that one up. Number 2.
Are you done with this one, Bob?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2. This is the big one. Okay. And then go to number 3, just so you can get some closure on it. Okay. So Bob, what kind of feedback would you give that to Christopher? Christopher's a good guy, right? So
we go all the way back to last week, so we know him very well.
Right. Well, he gave me diacritics back. Let's say that, right? Right.
No, look, I think look, it takes time, right, to do these things, right? Because you do have to rethink it, right? And can you do it? I'm not so sure you can do it all with Claude at the end of the day, right? I think Claude is only a piece of it, right? You need, and that is part of the problem right now, right? To do this effectively, it's not just Claude. You have to use multiple things. in order to really build something that is going to stand the test of time, right? And now, yes, you can build simple apps with Claude and, and put them out there, right? You see all the time, right? Oh, I built an app and I already have, 5,000 subscribers on my app or users of my app, right? So, I mean, that you can do. But when you're talking about re-engineering ERP and processes in ERP, right? It doesn't happen overnight, right? I mean, that's not something that you can do, right? If you even think about simple things like supply chain, right? A promise to order, right? How are you going to do that, right? It doesn't work like that. You have to take this and I'm watching what he's, and it's true, you have to scrap this stuff and it's not easy, all right? And and finding the right engineers to come in and to help to do this, right? I mean, look, people are learning. I mean, I've been talking to guys I've known for the last 30 years, right? Who are like building shit that they said they never thought they would be able to, right? Because
I've heard that. Yep.
Right. Because here's the beauty. They have the knowledge. They know these processes, right? They have all that knowledge. Now it's just a matter of how do you get the code to do it the right way and build it fast enough and make it so stable that it can stand up in an enterprise, right?
Hey, I want to tie something else into this because you're touching on a theme that I heard in this conversation that it's actually Jensen Huang, and it was on this podcast. The only reason I even know about this is because Nitin on our happy hour mentioned it yesterday. Yeah. And it's a conversation between apparently this guy, you'll see his name when I play the clip. He's a very well-known podcaster at this point, and he's having this probably the best most frank discussion I've seen interview with Jensen, where he's not blowing smoke up his behind. It's a pretty good exchange. But something that I think you just said, Bob, kind of reminded me of something that Jensen said on the subject of competing with China, the U.S. competing with China for AI hegemony, if you want to put it like that.
Hegemony.
Yeah, that. And while a lot of people are focused on the technology and the capacity for building chips and creating energy, check out what Jensen says about the importance of the U.S. companies and NVIDIA in specific being able to play in China in order to benefit what's going on in the U.S. when it comes to AI. Just a quick clip here.
AI researchers in the world, because they are limited in compute, they also come up with extremely smart algorithms. Remember, what I said. I said that Moore's law is advancing about 25% per year. However, through great computer science, we could still improve algorithm performance by 10x. What I'm saying is great computer science is where the lever is. We have got to acknowledge that most of the advances in AI came out of algorithm advances, not just the raw hardware. Now, if most of the advances came from algorithms and computer science and programming, tell me that their army of AI researchers is not their fundamental advantage. And we see it. DeepSeek is not inconsequential advance. And the day that DeepSeek comes out on Huawei first, that is a horrible outcome for our nation.
I'll stop it there. The emphasis on knowledge and expertise over the technology is something that I think is really overlooked. And all the stuff that we're talking about.
It truly is, right? It truly is overlooked, right? That knowledge, right? I mean, look, you can have all the best technology in the world, but if you don't have the knowledge, right? And I think to Jensen's point, right? He's pointing out that the Chinese, right, have to them the knowledge is crucial, right? Because they don't have all the advantages in a lot of ways that you have in the U.S., right? But I would say that's always been the key in Israel, It's always been about the knowledge and the computer science in Israel, right? It's always been. That's why they come up with so many great things, right? That's why you have all these companies there, because they are so focused on computer science and programming and the advances in that, right? That knowledge. We just don't have enough of that in the U.S. And you see the same thing in Eastern Europe too, by the way, right? Some of the Eastern European countries, it's the exact same thing. I think in the U.S. we suffer from that, but it's also the subject matter expertise, right? So if you want to rebuild the CRM system, you're not going to do that with a 21-year-old kid out of college. It's not going to happen.
Right.
You still need to have somebody who understands how does that whole system work.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
And how do you make it better? Right. How do you plug the holes that every CRM system failed? Right. And having built most of them, I can tell you there's a lot of holes that were failed. Right. And there's a lot of useless shit in those systems.
Yeah.
Right. And you pay a lot of money for a lot of things that you only use 10 to 20% of at the end of the day. So now how do you get to that 10 to 20% and make it, right, so that it's easy to change, easy to adapt, right? And that's where you need a combination. You need this youth that really understands this new world of AI, right? But you also need the older people who have that subject matter expertise, and pairing those two together in a way is really what's going to make things progress, right? And that's how you're going to start seeing, new applications come up, right? Where you have, new CRMs that and by the way, headless CRM has been around for a fucking long time. And I hate the fact that Salesforce acts like they invented headless CRM when it's been around forever, right?
As much as I dislike Tom Siebel invented CRM.
Exactly. And that's why, it doesn't even get me started on that. It's like,
well, let me ask you this. If you, what's the right mix of old and young, and what's the right leadership mix for old and young for a company to be successful here?
It's about execution, right? It's always been about execution, right? You need people who can execute, right? Who aren't afraid to take the risks, right? I think a lot of companies nowadays are just risk adverse. I think they're so afraid of making mistakes, right? Look, I'll give you a good example. Look, I have a lot of respect for SAP. I know I talk bad sometimes about them, but I truly have always wished in my heart that SAP could execute and be successful.
Yep.
Now, you may think they're successful because of the financial thing, but on the surface, I will say SAP has been a failure, and they've lived off of code that is, 35 years old, right? They keep reselling the same shit, right? They just, they take their on-prem product, put it in the cloud, call it S4. Now you have.
I think they're still selling your 2007 CRM.
Actually, so that's a very good point. The majority of customers on CRM at SAP are still on CRM 7.0.
Yep, that was your baby. I remember.
Which was built in 2007, right?
And it was the first actual CRM SAP ever had.
It was, and it was really the first, really what you would call truly the UX that was built on top of that was mind blowing.
Yep,
right?
Google.
But the problem with SAP is they failed to really do new products over the years, right? You look in what new products have they really brought to market that are mind blowing, right? That changed the game, right? And I think, Thomas Webernaut just did a little piece on an announcement that SAP did, right? Where he basically said, well, most SAP customers have already bought this shit. Now they're going to buy it twice, right? And so you look at that and you go, how does a company like SAP survive in this world? Well, if I was Christian Klein, and I know those guys don't like to listen to what I have to say, but the reality is they need to stop living off the laurels of ERP and start thinking about the future. And the future has to be about, look, you cannot build this stuff. SAP is not capable of building this stuff. They need to go acquire a bunch of startups. They need that talent. They need new talent. They need fresh blood in the company that can bring that to them, because they're not going to be able to do it on their own. Look, Salesforce did that, right? You look at how many AI companies they've acquired over the last 2.5 years, right? A lot of them have been small. And why did they acquire them? It was because of the talent, right? It was the talent that exists in those companies, right?
That goes back to when they bought DeepMind, like that was like 10.
Well, when they bought Richard Sulcher.
Yeah. When they bought,
Right. Metamind.
that was about what, 12
They
years
bought
ago?
Richard Sulcher at the end of the day, right?
Good reason too.
And
I mean, look, the guy is one of the leading experts on AI in the world,
look,
right? I mean,
.com.
yeah.
And look, they've always been thinking about this stuff, right? I think execution has always been a problem with a lot of companies, right? When you get big, right? Look what happened to Oracle over the years, right? Oracle used to be a thought leader in a lot of things, right? When you look at Fusion, when Fusion first came out, well, the fucking problem was it took them 20 years to deliver on Fusion, right? Because they couldn't execute, right? And I think execution is really the biggest issue I see in the industry today. Companies are like paralyzed. They can't execute. Now, Salesforce, I have to give them credit. Like, look, even though I don't like some of the announcements, I have to say, look, what they're trying to do is actually the right vision. I'm just not sure that the framework that they have for this is actually going to really get them out of the hot water, per se. I'm not sure that it's all there, right? I think a lot of it is still a lot of marketing fluff at the end of the day.
What, for going back to SAP for a second, wouldn't the first step be acknowledging or realizing or wanting to be an actual CX company and not just a bolt-on to ERP?
Well, I think so. So there you go. So you hit the main problem on the head, which is what kind of company is SAP? If you ask SAP what kind of company they are, they'll tell you they're an ERP company. Right. So that's problem number one. Right. They made a lot of acquisitions over the years of good companies. Right. But they've run them to the ground. Success Factors. Right. The company they bought in the travel industry. Right. You know.
Yeah.
I mean, they've run these companies to the ground. Right. And the problem is if your core business is ERP and the majority of your customers are on ERP, where do you think your R&D dollars are going to at the end of the day?
And marketing dollars too. Yeah.
Right. That is the disadvantage that a company like SAP has, because they try to peanut butter shit and it doesn't work at the end of the day. Yeah. Salesforce has a distinct advantage, which is they are focused on one thing at the end of the day. And that is driving the CRM space. Right. Whatever that means. Now it's agentic, right? But they are focused on that, and they can move the entire company in one direction so fast to get it done. The problem with a company like SAP is, what do I do? I believe SAP could be a major player in the CRM space. I have always believed that. And the problem was never being able to get the money to actually make it work. And if you remember, 2007, I had some amazing people that worked for me, Mike Dela Cruz, Jujar, all these guys. We did some very interesting things back in those days.
You did.
Right?
That was brilliant.
We put SAP on the map for CRM.
Yep.
We were the first to actually put CRM on an iPhone back in when the iPhone was first announced.
You had the first modern
had a developer's kit.
You had the first modern UI
who was able to hack it and actually put CRM on the iPhone. And I got in a lot of trouble for that, by the way. That was that was especially when we announced it at a press conference before telling Apple that we had actually.
You know what though? That was the first. I remember it because I wrote about it, and I wrote a substantial piece on it because when it came out, I saw it at Sapphire actually, and I was blown away because it was also, and this was not a small thing, aside from it being a full enterprise grade CRM technology application suite. It was also the first modern UI that anybody had in any CRM, anything.
That's right.
Right.
And you could actually play Pac-Man on the UI.
Well, it was like you were smart. You did the white space, the Google-like interface, man. It was smart. It did what people.
It was, but see, that just it just highlights, right, the problems that a company like SAP has, right, which is look, if you want to be a multi-product company, right, and I believe that Adobe suffers from the same thing too, right, trying to be a multi-product company. It's hard. What is your strategy? What are you trying to do at the end of the day? You say you want to be a business suite, but you can't really be a business suite if all your applications are not state of the art. That makes it really hard to be a business suite, right? Which is why I'm not a fan of business suites, because I don't believe that business suites can really, can survive in this world. Right, suites are not the answer at the end of the day.
Yep, not anymore.
No, it's got to be best of breed, right? Companies they're gonna pay for what gets them the most return on their investment.
And and to your point, they have existing investments they don't want to give up. One, two, the technologies to actually tie everything together are there. It's not like they used to be very difficult, because I remember when you and I had a conversation about it years ago, how difficult it was for you to integrate with some piece of Oracle. I don't remember what it was though, but we were talking about it, but the difficulty was always there. But now it's not like there's a trillion ways to integrate, right? I mean, and it's not like, oh my God, we can't do this. Yeah, you can do this, and it's really not as hard as it used to be. So that's the other side of it. So best of breed becomes I used to like suites because it was consistent, but the reality is I'm with you now. I think best of breed is the absolute way to go.
It has to be. If you're a CIO and you're not looking at best of breed, then you're not doing your job at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
All right, so we gotta wrap up shortly, but I want to circle back around. I want to get Bob's take. This week, Adobe did their thing, and I don't know how much you caught of our critique of the opening keynote. It feels like there's a number of vendors who are still operating in the kind of in their pre ChatGPT frame, as opposed to what's going on now. And it feels like they're not talking the way they need to talk, walking the way they need to walk. But if it were up to you, and after you talked about ServiceNow, they have a huge user conference coming up in a couple of weeks. That means Bill McDermott will probably have the biggest audience of the year for whatever he says in this opening keynote. Paul and I, we really focus on the opening keynote. We know there are a lot of product keynotes, and that's a different thing.
Yeah.
The opening keynote is like your State of the Union, basically, for a company. What would you want to hear from him that would give you confidence that they're going in the right direction there, regardless of all the AI anxiety out there, that they are going in the right direction? What do you think their customers want to hear when it comes to that on that keynote stage?
I think one, their customers don't want to hear about partnerships anymore, because I think everybody is fucking tired of listening to the partnerships, right? Who cares if you have a partnership with NVIDIA? Everybody and their brother has a partnership with NVIDIA, right? I think if I was Bill McDermott, I would be talking realities. I would not be talking sales pitch. I would be talking about the reality of what am I going to do for my customers, and how am I going to lead them right into this age of AI and keep them, right? You've got to address their concerns, right? Because they're concerned, right? They're wondering, like, Do I need to ditch this? Could I do this on my own? Right? You've got to talk to your customers about reality, right? And why you're going to be, and how you're going to get them to that next level, and how you're going to work with them to get to that level. I think, I think that's the thing that's missing out of a lot of these keynotes, right? It's a lot of blah, 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 blah. And the customer comes on stage and talks about what great stuff they've done with the products, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is, we all know that that's a bunch of bullshit. And, and I think there needs to be a reality discussion, right? I think customers would love if a CEO came on stage and said, look, we're working to try to figure this out, just like you're trying to figure this out. We don't have all the answers, right? But we have a lot of smart people who are helping us to get to that strategy and vision that's going to help you to be successful in your business, right? I think there is not enough transparency and honesty in these keynotes. And I think that is the biggest issue that customers, I think, are facing, right? Because they don't know who to believe anymore, right? Because, I mean, look, I've heard it from Salesforce customers after all these announcements that just like, they don't know what to believe, right? Is this stuff real? Is it fake? Is it, because at some juncture, you have to open up and you have to show your heart and say, this is really what we're struggling with ourselves as a company, right? And I think companies, they just, I've always had this belief, right? To be transparent and honest, right? Even when it hurt my business, right? Even when I had to tell customers that this is not the right product for you at the end of the day, right? Yep. I don't want you to buy it, right? Because you're not going to succeed, right? And maybe it's a fault I have, but I do believe that customers really appreciate when you're honest and upfront with them, and they're willing to stay with you as long as you show that you're trying to get them there, right? And I think there's just not enough of that nowadays. That I think the AI hype got so overblown. Companies are overwhelmed, right? I think, when I look at a lot of the enterprise software companies, I think they're overwhelmed. I think they're struggling, all of them, right? They're watching their valuation tank, right? Their investors are at a point where they don't know if their investors are going to, or dump their stock, right? Just think of what would happen if one of those investors took a few billion and dumped it, right? What's going to happen to those companies? I mean, you're already seeing it with Adobe and others, right? Where you just watch this thing start to tank, right? But I think a lot of that is, you can stop that fear by being honest at the end of the day, right? Stop the marketing hype and be honest.
One of the closest things I've heard to that, and it's close, it's not quite that level, but was Oracle actually did something which was really interesting a few months ago, and Brent will remember this, which is somehow pricing of AI came up, and Oracle's giving it away, actually. And so Oracle said, look, you're already paying us basically a shitload of money, right? Why would we charge you for AI too? Right, which is about as honest as you get. And it actually was a very,
and it was true, right? Yeah. It's absolutely true.
Absolutely the case. I know
it's absolutely true.
And they made people loved hearing it, and they're getting AI for nothing because you're already paying us a fortune, right?
If I'm already paying you a subscription price of anywhere between $400 and $1,000 a month per seat. Yeah. Why should I not get that shit for free?
Exactly. And Oracle actually just acknowledged.
Right? I mean, why should I have to pay extra for an advancement that you promised me you were going to help me be more successful in my business by building new things? Now, why do I have to pay for that again?
Yeah. And Oracle was honest about it too, which was actually, I remember we both really liked hearing that at the time. It was like one of these things you say, wow, you know what? That's what you do.
And the other thing, because what they'd said is, if we build it for you, we're not going to charge you. Now, if you want to do something that's complex and eats tokens like for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, we'll work with you on that to come up with something that makes sense. I thought that was even a better answer because that lets you feel like we're in this thing together, and we understand that you guys have additional costs if we do something that's really complex. We get it. Thank you for letting us know. We'll work on it together.
I don't think anybody understands the true cost of AI.
Yeah.
And,
Oh my God.
And what it's going to cost you as an enterprise, right? If you fully embrace AI, what is that going to cost me at the end of the day, right? If I'm being charged by tokens, and I just look at like Anthropic and what and
me too.
ChatGPT and right, and I'm looking at this and I'm going, okay, I know what I'm paying. Like I can just imagine in an enterprise what this is going to be like, right? This is going to be astronomical, right? And if you think about it, I think I said this the last time, right? When Salesforce came out with the cloud, nobody truly understood the cost of cloud, right? It was a great concept, great idea, but it ended up being very freaking expensive at the end of the day. And the more you used it, the more expensive it was, right? And it wasn't until like 10 years later that the costs finally started to come down, right? And that was because it's like anything else, right? Supply and demand, right? And you have the same problem now. I mean, I just can't imagine if an enterprise was to go full AI, right? What that's going to cost them at the end of the day. If you're paying, because if you think about it, right? You're using tokens, right? Token is like paying for a transaction at the end of the day.
Subway.
Right. And I always come back to the banking thing. People never fully understand the banking business, right? But having built banking systems, I can tell you, right, the cost of a simple transaction like a deposit, right, costs the bank more than anything they make off the deposit at the end of the day. Because transaction costs are actually very high. And when you have large volume transaction costs, the price doesn't come down because you have more. The price actually goes up at the end of the day, right? And I think understanding that, I think a lot of companies really need to get their act together and start really doing the studies around what this is going to cost them in the long run. Because I don't think there's been enough studies on what this is actually going to cost.
I agree.
Right.
There's been a lot of studies at the consumer level, but not at the
consumer level, but not at the enterprise level.
Right. Exactly.
Right. And the enterprise is really, if you think about it, I mean, it's really, you think about the number of transactions that flow through. Just take one Fortune 500 company. Take somebody like just a major car company like Stellantis, and you could just imagine, right, what it would cost a company like Stellantis if they were really to go full blown into the AI world. On top of paying the seat prices for Salesforce and the seat prices, subscription price for SAP and Workday and all the other things that they have on top of that, right? I mean, this is, I think people just totally have underestimated what this is going to cost them.
Amen.
And therefore, AI anxiety reigns supreme for everybody involved.
Including, that's why the financial analysts, I believe, have so much anxiety over this whole thing, right?
Well, they don't know how much should be invested and what to expect and how long it'll take if they get it back.
And the question is, how long before somebody comes along and starts a real serious movement to kill all these AI data centers? It's already happening in some states.
Yeah, was it New Hampshire? Didn't New Hampshire say no?
Yeah, one of them, because of the amount of water that it takes, the amount of electricity, right? I mean, our infrastructure in the US and across the globe already is suffering, right, from EVs. Now you're going to add all these massive things on top of it. And how the hell is that going to work?
I just found out a couple of days ago that Northern Virginia, where I live, literally is responsible for 70% of the internet traffic in the world. Runs right through.
You didn't know that?
No, 70%. Oh, yeah, that's not that number.
You didn't know that, did you? No. That's been like that for decades.
This town, Manassas, which is a city of 30,000 people, it's small, has like 26 data centers already, and there's more coming or more being built. And Northern Virginia has like 80 or 90 or 100 and something. It's the second largest or largest concentration in the country of data centers. So it's
I think
right
it's
here.
the largest.
Not a good place to live in a war, by the way.
No. Well,
Trying to
Manassas,
take-
we figured that part out during the Civil War. So we already had 2 battles here in the Civil War. So we've already got a history.
Wow, we went from AI to the Civil War. It's time to end this show, man. We always enjoy the
It was
No BS
awesome.
Thursdays,
Oh,
man.
awesome, man.
Thank you for joining us and doing that. The only thing is, what is that? Is that Buffalo Sabres we doing hockey? Are they in the playoffs or something?
They are in the playoffs for the first time in
Like 18
since
years.
2011, I think it was the last time they were in the
Wow.
playoffs. Right.
Well, I'm a Rangers fan, and they didn't make it this year. They were terrible. But that's all right. Tonight, I got the Yankees, I got the Knicks, and I got the NFL draft for the Giants.
That's what I have, the NFL draft for the Rams. So
I got all three.
Yeah, I'm not interested in the NFL draft. The Bills don't have too many picks, and
We got
to be honest,
5
the Bills have never been successful outside of Josh Allen. They've never really been successful in their draft picks.
We're
to be
getting,
quite honest.
the Giants are getting better. We had, last year, what's his name, Carter, Abdul Carter. He's actually,
Yeah.
he actually ended up being really good. Like he was number 2 in defensive rookie of the year or something like that. But this year, Styles and Downs, those are the 2 I want. Unless we can get Love. If we can get him, I'll take him.
all you need is love, man.
Oh, wow. All right. On that note.
Yeah, on that
I
note,
think
by the way,
the Rams are going to collapse this year.
well, it was a good conversation there, Bob. Time to end it now, though. So, on behalf of Bob, well, that was a little BS. I'm sorry. That was BS. On behalf of Bob Stutz, I'm Brent Leary.
I'm Paul Greenberg.
We are the CRM Players, and we'll be back. Are we going to be doing something with Paul Greenberg next week? You
Yes,
wanna
we
talk
are,
about
but
that?
we'll leave it a secret for now.
Oh, okay. Going to leave us in suspenders. Well, we'll leave. We'll on our usual note with Minnie, and we will see you next Friday. Next Friday. Damn it. Next Thursday. Jeez.
Thursday.
Time to end this.